drumming is one of those things I would recommend everyone to learn drums because it gives you so much coordination skills. It gives you coordination skills for when you learn to drive, coordination skills for, doing guitar and vocals. It helps you think about how you write a riff completely differently as well. You're always thinking about like how to best fit with the drums and where kind of the intricacies of the rhythm should lie in the riff. So yeah, drumming is like an essential skill, I think, in life.
This is Tom from Ghost Cult, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Serena Cherry from Svalbard. The band put out their fourth album, The Weight of the Mask, back in October on Nuclear Blast Records. Serena, thank you for joining us.
Oh, hi, Tom. Thanks very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very much. So I was hesitating in the beginning when I was thinking how to introduce the band, because I think you're hard to categorize, and I don't like to impose genres on people. So how would you describe your music to people who are unfamiliar?
This is the hardest question. And in all of our 10 years as a band, I still haven't figured out the best way to answer this because we have so many different influences. We definitely blend a lot of different styles into one. I mean, that kind of makes it sound like it might be all over the place, but, we're not Mr. Bungle. But I guess, sort of atmospheric post-metal, black metal, crust, D-beat, with epic guitar leads. I don't know. And really depressing lyrics. We're difficult to categorize into one genre. And for me, I think, all of my favorite bands tend to also be really difficult to categorize into one genre. So I take that as a good thing.
Yeah, I think for sure it is. It's good to have multiple influences. So you mentioned Mr. Bungle, who I'm a big fan of too. What were some of the other kind of key influences that kind of inspired you to start making music?
Oh, for me personally, wow. Well, I've always been obsessed with music. My mum is a record collector who plays piano and guitar and stuff, and from a really young age, I grew up when our evening entertainment would be sitting in front of the record player, picking different records to listen to rather than watching the TV. So, I grew up with it from a really, really young age, but I first fell obsessively in love with pop music, specifically the Spice Girls. I used to videotape all their videos and watch them in slow motion, trying to learn all the dance moves. And it was one of those things that was like everyone at school liked the Spice Girls, but I loved the Spice Girls to that obsessive degree. And around that time, around that age, I started training as a dancer and I really wanted to be a pop star. And I'm so sad that dream never came true. And then when I was 12 years old, I discovered metal through MTV Sports Snowboarding PlayStation 1 video game. Which had a Fear Factory song on the soundtrack, Edge Crusher from Obsolete.
Classic.
What a song, yeah. I heard that, and I remember being a bit scared of it the first time I heard it, because that was the first time I'd heard like screaming and shouting on a song. I was like, oh my God, this guy is off the chain. Like, he must be crazy. And I was a bit scared of it, but I think when you're that age, similarly to like horror movie video covers, you're a little bit fascinated by what you're scared of. And I found I kept listening to that song over and over again. And then eventually I saved up all my money. I had one of those jobs where you deliver papers. I saved up all my money from that to buy the Digipack version of Obsolete by Fear Factory. So Fear Factory were my gateway band into metal. And then after that, I discovered Slipknot. And it was bands like Slipknot, Kittie, Arch Enemy, that really inspired me to want to pick up instruments. The first instrument I learned piano from a really young age. I started learning the piano when I was 4 years old. But the first instrument I was like, I want to do this. This is my prerogative, was drums. I started learning drums when I was 13 because I just wanted to be Joey Jordison. And then few years later, I switched to guitar because the drum teacher I had was very anti-metal and wanted me to learn all those kind of like snare drum rudiments and very technical things, which were, I see it as essential now, but at the time it was very boring when you're a teenager. So I switched to guitar. Never had a guitar lesson, completely self-taught. I used to just sneak into my sister's bedroom and try and play Slayer songs on her classical nylon strung guitar. And then eventually, sort of figured it out from there. But that was sort of how I got into playing music and metal, really.
So you formed Svalbard with Liam back in 2011, is that right?
Yeah.
And you were doing music before that. Did you have like a solo thing you were doing, or you were in a band, or you did both?
I did many different musical projects, but I guess my main one was I did a solo project where I self-released 4 albums. It was kind of loop station, post-rocky, weird, experimental stuff. I used to like mic up a load of weird things and use them as percussion and then build layers on top of that had like very inspired by bands like Mono and Explosions in the Sky. I also played in a prog metal band called Austere. Not that Austere, not the racist Austere. We just happened to have the same name as them. We were finalists in Battles for Bloodstock, but we didn't win. We lost to a thrash band. Classic. I played in an art rock band. I played in drums in a crust band called This Ends Here. Yeah, I did a black metal solo project from the age of 15 to 21. Also wrote 4 albums under that name, but I won't reveal the name because it's super cringe and you can probably still unearth it on MySpace. But we did some cool. So with that was like the first experience I had of like building full metal songs was with that black metal project, and ended up building a live band around that. And we played shows with like Galhammer and Nactmistium and stuff like that, which was cool when you're 17 years old. I've done loads of different things, but it was my post-rock solo project that was sort of led to Liam and I meeting and forming Svalbard.
And if I understand correctly, when you first formed the band, you had a different singer. And is it right to say that you didn't really want to be the lead singer at the start of the band?
Yeah, absolutely. I always wrote the lyrics, but I never wanted to do vocals. Having, I did vocals in my first ever black metal project live, and then everything else I did guitar-wise when I was in the prog band and stuff. I just play guitar, and I love just being able to play guitar. I love being able to get lost in playing on stage and not have to think about having to do vocals. So when we formed the band, we had a guy called Mikey from a band called Evita on vocals. I still wrote all the lyrics, but he did them. And occasionally I would do the odd backup vocal on the record or something. But it was not, I just wanted to play guitar. And then Mikey left the band, and we just struggled to find someone to replace him, really, to the point where we were like, well, I write the lyrics, Liam and I can both do vocals. Why not? It's one less seat in the van, one less mouth to feed, like one less expense, which is, that's how you look at things when you do a band, really. Let's just give it a go ourselves. But sometimes I wonder, like, it'd be really nice. I'd love to have like someone do guest vocals for a Svalbard set for once, just so I can play guitar, just play guitar and just do those leads. That'd be really fun.
So that mindset, is that really just a matter of wanting to be able to focus on the guitar? It's not particularly that you don't really want to be like the front person. It's not that you don't like singing. It's just you'd like to be able to focus on one and not have both at the same time.
Yeah, it's simply because doing vocals and playing guitar live at the same time is really tricky. And I always feel you end up compromising something. You end up not playing guitar as well as you could if you were just playing guitar. Same with vocals, like, because it just really is like a case of sort of that coordination. But it's not, I've always been the lyric writer and always had the kind of the message to give to the band. And I do like doing vocals, but it's just at the same time, I feel I'm very hard on myself, and I feel like when I'm doing both at the same time, I can never really be where I want to be with it.
Yeah. Do you think that having the drumming experience helps you to be able to coordinate singing and playing guitar at the same time?
Drumming is one of those things I would recommend everyone to learn drums because it gives you so much coordination skills. It gives you coordination skills for when you learn to drive, coordination skills for, doing guitar and vocals. It helps you think about how you write a riff completely differently as well. You're always thinking about like how to best fit with the drums and where kind of the intricacies of the rhythm should lie in the riff. So yeah, drumming is like an essential skill, I think, in life.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea. I sort of, from time to time, I've thought, oh, I'd like to do it. But then I think as a non-drummer, when you think about playing drums, you think, okay, how am I going to get into this? Like, do I have to have a drum kit? Like, where do I get access to drums to start practicing drums? It's not the kind of thing you can really so easily, casually just step into.
No, definitely. I completely agree with that. And it's expensive. Cymbals cost a lot of money. A drum kit costs a lot of money. I was very lucky in that I went to a school that had a drum kit. And if you were part of like the music club, you could go in at lunchtime and play on the drums. So that was where I got my practice in. But yeah, it's not the most convenient instrument to learn, put it that way.
Not necessarily the most convenient for the neighbors either. Like, it has that reputation of being the thing that people complain about the most.
Definitely, yeah. Although you can get some really good electronic kits now where they're very dampened, like people won't even be able to hear it in the next room. So yeah, there's definitely workarounds, but even those, I mean, those are really expensive as well. So there's a lot of barriers when it comes to learning drums.
Now, getting back into talking about some of your inspiration. So I wanted to ask you a bit about your feelings as a woman in metal. So I know that back on, I think it was your first album, One Day All This Will End, you had that song, Expect Equal Respect, sort of talking or singing about the treatment of women in rock and metal. And you mentioned Arch Enemy earlier. So I'm wondering, have there been any particular women in music that you found particularly inspirational, that you think kind of opened the door for women like yourself to be involved in heavy music?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, Kittie were one of the first bands I ever saw live, and seeing them perform on stage, hearing Morgan growling and shredding on guitar was definitely lit a fire inside me, and it struck that chord of suddenly it seems like a possibility that you could maybe do that too. I always look back to that moment and think how powerful it was. And something I think about as well is, 10 years ago, as a woman in metal, you definitely experienced a lot of like negative comments and a lot of being treated with a lot of suspicion sometimes by people. I think, wow, that was how it was for me 10 years ago. How must it have been for Kittie, 20 years ago, when they were teenagers, they were kicking down the door, blazing the trail for all the women like me and stuff to come through. And I just imagine how tough that must have been for them and how hostile the environment may have been. And I'm just so grateful that they persevered. But yeah, there's just, I mean, Doro, wow. I went to see her live recently and she's absolutely incredible. There's so many amazing women here in the UK. In the UK scene, we've got Justine Jones from Employed to Serve, Jamila from Ithaca, Debbie from Harriet on guitar and vocals. Like, it's a really, do you know what? As a band in Svalbard, we make a point of whenever we get to select our support bands and bands we take on tour with us, we always pick bands with women in. And we do not struggle. Like, we do not struggle to find loads of amazing bands with women in. So that really excites me. But yeah, I mean, Angela Gossow, I think it was seeing Angela Gossow perform with Arch Enemy many, many years ago. That's what really, that I remember seeing that and then going home and screaming into a pillow, trying to emulate her. So she was definitely a big inspiration for me. And Tarja Turunen from Nightwish, obviously completely different sound, but one of my favorite bands. Yeah, there's so many amazing women out there. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that they persevered.
And thinking broadly, not necessarily just about women, but you've got the song on the latest album, Eternal Spirits, which seems to be a song sort of recognizing different inspirational figures. Did you have anyone particularly in mind when you were singing that song, or it was more sort of a general celebration of people that have inspired you or people who are inspirational?
Eternal Spirits is about Joey Jordison.
Okay. It's very specific.
It is, yeah. It's almost like the sort of musical equivalent of lighting a candle for someone who's passed away. It's it's my personal tribute because I was lucky enough when I was younger to go to some Slipknot signings and meet the band. And I remember writing Joey a letter about how I started playing drums because of him. And he just made so much time for his fans, and he was so encouraging to me. And, just made, so his love and passion of music and for his fans was just incredible. And I feel so lucky that my musical heroes when I was a teenager were people that kind, and people who really took the time to say, hey, don't give up, try learning these different things. What a great guy. And when he passed away, it really led me to think about how if it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't be here playing music. Like, he is the reason I picked up drums. He is the reason I was so obsessed with metal. And, he definitely lit that fire in me to play music and to play in bands. So I wanted to honor his memory and that inspiration that he gave to me.
I see. All right. That's really cool. Thinking about the lyrical, actually more the vocal side of things. So yeah, as anyone who's listened to the band will know, you have a variety of different vocal styles on your records. And you mentioned about, I think you said it was when you saw Arch Enemy that you first were inspired to try screaming. So you talked about the Spice Girls obsession when you were a kid. When you first started out singing, what was kind of your initial style, and how did that change over the years? Because I imagine it probably took a while before you got to the point where you were actually combining different styles.
I mean, I started singing from a really young age. As I said, wanted to be a pop star. So singing and dancing was, I trained properly as a dancer. And when I was singing, I was always like the lead in the school play. I went to a Catholic school, so I've played Mary in the Christmas Nativity so many times. Know that role off by heart. But yeah, so I was singing from a really, really young age. And a lot of the vocalists at the time who really, really inspired me were vocalists who are particularly unaffected, who don't sound like they're putting it on. So a big one for me is Olivia Newton-John. I used to obsess over that Grease soundtrack. My mum had it on vinyl, and I'd sit there with the vinyl in my hands, reading the words, like listening to lyrics and singing along. And Olivia Newton-John, like if I could sound like anyone, it's her that I want to sound like when I sing. And I love the effortlessness and the breath to her voice, because a lot of singers kind of will hide that softness, but she has it there in spades, and it has a vulnerability to it that's just amazing. So yeah, Olivia Newton-John, big influence on my clean singing anyway, and she's still who I try and sound like when I'm in the studio. And then also, I'm listening to bands like My Bloody Valentine when I was in my 20s, and to a more recent note, like bands like Japanese Breakfast and that kind of real softer side of vocal. I really like the dynamic. I'm not Christina Aguilera. I can't belt things at the top of my voice when I sing. So I like having that softer dynamic with my cleans. It's really, really soft and fragile and vulnerable. And then my scream is a very different beast altogether. Learning how to do it. I mean, when I first learned how to scream, I destroyed my singing voice. My singing voice was shot for a really long time because it comes from two different places, and you have to learn a lot of control to be able to do both. And the things that have really helped me with learning that control is running and swimming regularly. Just to
get a lung capacity.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, I'm sort of aware from the limited experience I've had from singing and having some lessons that when it comes to rock and metal, microphone technique is definitely important. But like you say, there are still various physical, technical difficulties with it. Do you have sort of particular things that you do on stage in order to be able to go between these different styles? Like how do you manage that so that you don't actually destroy your body these days?
It's one of those things. I think it's a learning curve, and I think I'm not quite there yet. So on our last tour, I did have points where I was struggling, if I'm completely honest with you. I think the longer you go on a tour, the longer you're set, especially if you're headlining, going between a scream, which is shredding your throat, to clean singing, which requires all of that kind of fluidity in your throat. Like it's two very different things. And it's usually the case where screaming night after night will take its toll on my cleans and you'll lose certain registers. You can hear now that my throat is sore, and that's still from after the tour. Normally I have a much higher pitched voice, but I'm also a bit ill. But yeah, so there's like a lot of warm-up techniques that I use. I'm very careful on top. I mean, I'm quite sensible and I don't drink or do drugs or any of that kind of thing. So I'm always about preserving my voice and looking after that. And when we're in the van, I'm quite quiet. Like I try not to talk too much. And sometimes I worry that gets perceived as rudeness, right? Like when we've got support bands and they want to be chatting all night while there's a DJ playing really loud music at the end. And I'm like, I do want to chat, but I don't want to shout over this because it will just cause more damage. So it's always about, I guess, kind of putting your vocals first before anything else. Honey as well, Manuka honey. Sometimes I just spoon raw Manuka honey into my mouth, no water or anything, not even diluted, in between songs on stage. And that'll sort of keep me going.
It's that's quite a contrast to the stereotype of the rocker that has the bottle of Jack Daniels. Although I'm not sure how often people really do that, and whether that's just it looks like it's a bottle of Jack Daniels.
You know what? I read about these kind of bands from the 80s or even bands nowadays who love to party, and I'm like absolutely flabbergasted because how do they do that? It's hard enough when you're sober. It's hard enough to stay well and to stay fit and to be able to perform night after night. How do they do it? Drunk or hungover or on drugs or everything? Their bodies must be absolutely destroyed. Like, yeah, it's a challenge enough as it is, let alone against all of that stuff as well. So,
well, I guess maybe you have to look at it over the long term. It's like maybe people can do that for a short period of time, but can they sustain this for a long career?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But then there's lots of bands that have sustained it, haven't there? Like, look at Motorhead. He just kept going, didn't he?
That's true. Yeah, I think maybe for someone like Lemmy, it's like his body was somehow adapted to it and he wouldn't have been able to stop. It's like this is what the body expects now. But to be fair as well, he also wasn't singing like Christina Aguilera.
No.
He had a very specific way. Something that I wanted to get into, because I feel that this is an important part of the band, an important part of the lyrics, is talk about mental health a bit. And I watched an interview with you where I thought you made a really powerful point. The interviewer was asking you about what you would say to somebody who was struggling with their mental health. And you said something like, you wouldn't tell people that things are going to get better because you think when people are depressed, that can feel like a very alienating kind of thing to say, because you might feel that they're not going to get better. And so what you would say to someone was that we're here with you. And I thought this was a very interesting point, because then I was sort of slightly separately thinking about how a lot of music that I take comfort from appears to be on the surface very grim. Like, let's say, for example, if I wanted to listen to like Henry Rollins or Lingua Ignota screaming into the void, to someone who doesn't like that kind of music, they might go, oh, this music's so depressing. Why do you like that? And then I sort of put the two things together and I thought, is the reason why I like this kind of music because it feels like I can relate to this? Do you think that that's something about why this kind of music can feel comforting, because it makes us feel like we can identify with this? You think that's what's going on here?
Oh, definitely. I think that music is a language. And when you're listening to music that is dark and covers very sort of heavy themes and stuff like that, it's speaking to you in that language that you're currently feeling or experiencing. So it's kind of having that power of resonance, which is something that I'm all about, of when someone else through song is able to articulate something you're experiencing or you're feeling. In that moment, you are not as alone as you were before you were listening to that song. And that is an incredibly powerful thing. And that is what gets a lot of people through those times. So, I think it's super important. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, that's what gets me through the dark times. Listening to, I can always tell when I'm really, really depressed, because that's when I listen to more Porcupine Tree and Riverside and Anathema. Yeah, that's when. Or there's a UK band called Embrace. Oh, they're so good, but my God, the lyrics are heavy. And when that gets on maximum rotation, that's when it's going through a dark time. But I think there's a power to that, because I think in reality, it still is difficult to talk to people when you're really going through hell. It is difficult because you don't want to feel like you're placing the burden on them. You don't want to feel like, I think it can make you feel quite guilty, and or like, you worry, oh, but everyone's got problems, I don't want to add to other people's problems. So it's like the tendency to sort of go insular when you're struggling is quite common. And then if you've got music there with you that's communicating to you in that different language, in that different way, it can pull you through when nothing else can.
No, I think that's a really good point, actually. It's like you don't have to tell the song how you're feeling and feel self-conscious about it. You can just have the song talk to you.
Exactly, yeah.
And thinking about your lyrics, when you are singing songs that are addressing, struggles, mental health issues, do you sort of feel like the message needs to be one of overcoming, or would you also write songs that are more, I don't know if it's right to say negative, but just kind of more expressing the struggle? Do you feel like it has to be sort of, I guess I think of this more as an arch enemy style of kind of like, I'm going to defeat whatever is in front of me. Is that sort of your approach, or can it go in different directions?
There's many different directions. I think that's been the real key factor in the lyrics of The Weight of the Mask, is that I've covered so many different aspects of what it's like to live with depression. And sometimes you wake up and you want to fight. You want to fight against all those negative voices in your brain, and you're full of that kind of resilience. And, songs like Defiance are about that. They're about defying the low expectations you have of yourself when you're feeling really down. But then we've got songs like November, which acknowledge the isolation that comes with mental illness, and songs like Be My Tomb, which acknowledge the desperation of the feeling like realizing that this is never going to end. This is something that you're going to have to live with. So I really wanted to cover kind of all aspects of that. It's never, we're not hate breed. We're not like positive mental attitude all the time. I think I really like that we have a song like Defiance, where that song is like my own personal cheerleader, but it comes from a place of darkness. It's still acknowledging that darkness. It's just sort of acknowledging the fight against it as well. But yeah, not every song is like that, because I feel like that would be a tiresome way there's so much breadth to mental illness and that experience, that just looking at it through the lens of it's a boss I must defeat isn't, it's not as all encompassing as I would like.
And I think, that attitude makes sense when considering your music altogether, because you do have so much variety. It's like if you just listen to the music from an instrumental point of view, obviously you've got incredibly heavy passages. You've got these more, I want to say floaty, but floaty doesn't really feel like quite the right word, but there's sort of like spaced out, almost kind of soothing passages. So yeah, it probably would feel a bit weird if like the lyrical message was sort of the same the whole way through, when the music does change its tones so much.
Oh, definitely. And how it works with the writing process is we write all the music first together as a group. And then once the entire music is written for the whole album, that's when I then do the lyrics, because I'm fitting the themes of the lyrics to the atmospheres in the songs.
And do you find that difficult? Because yeah, from my experience, I tend to find it's like starting, if I want to have music and I want to have lyrics, I kind of have to do a little bit of one and then a little bit of the other, and kind of have them building at the same time. If I have music, I don't really know how to put lyrics onto it. And if I have lyrics, I don't know how to put music around it. So you feel comfortable with being able to, like, do you have to have been involved in writing the music, or could you take a piece of music that you weren't involved in writing and feel relatively comfortable working out how you could fit lyrics and singing on top of it?
I've never been in that scenario. So every time I've written lyrics for music, it's been for music that I have written or contributed towards. So yeah, in Svalbard, like I write all my guitar leads and stuff like that. So I've never been in a situation where, say, a band has written a song and then I've got to write lyrics over the top of it. That'd be really interesting. That'd be something I'd be like, I'd want to do. I'd want to give it a try just to see how different that feels. But yeah, like fitting the lyrics to the song is a painstaking process. It takes a really long time. because yeah, like I say, sort of you want to match the feeling of the song without compromising what you're trying to express at the same time. So yeah, there's a lot of sifting involved, and a lot of, like, especially with songs that have more complex drumming or like really busy sections, fitting the words over that whilst ensuring they still make sense and still fit the emotion of the song is definitely one of the bigger challenges when it comes to writing Svalbard songs, for sure.
And thinking about your sort of process of lyric writing, do you write regularly, like maybe for journals or things like that, or poetry, things you're not necessarily thinking of using as lyrics?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a massive notes app on my phone of sad notes every day a sad note. And yeah, I have a journal as well that's equally as sad. And when it comes to writing the lyrics, I sort of go back through it all, another very painstaking process, reliving the trauma, and sort of sift through and find, say, lines that are of similar kind of emotion, expressing similar scenarios or that kind of thing, and condense them all down into their sort of what I think would be, you know, their most effective and clear words. Because obviously my day job, I work as an editor, so that's, I guess I take quite an editorial approach to lyric writing, in that I'm constantly sifting and finding those bits that make the communication of the words in the song the most effective.
How long have you been an editor for?
Nearly 2 years.
And who are you editing for?
Well, so I'm the social media editor for Games Radar.
For Games Reader?
Mm.
And how did you get into that?
Previously, I wrote a games column for Kerrang. And then, yeah, and I also worked in social media for a few different brands, for like Virgin Media and Coaster Force and stuff. So I've had the social media experience, had the game writing experience, and now the two have met, and I love it, and I love working with them. And yeah, I'm just on my lunch break from that now, actually. So
when do you need to go back? Do you have time for a couple more?
We've got a review. I've got a review that I need to get up at 2 p.m. So that's okay. That's ages away. Yeah.
Okay.
Super Mario RPG.
Super Mario RPG. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember Zelda RPGs. I mean, I remember Super Mario games. I guess that's kind of my era. I think, I'm not sure exactly, and I'm not going to ask you because it's rude to ask a woman her age, but I'm aware that I must be older than you, because when the Spice Girls came out, I was 16 or 17. So I guess you're a generation or two below me. But yeah, Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, these are the things that I remember. So do you regularly play games, or you're just yes, this is a part of your life?
You kind of have to be to write about them and stuff. Yeah, it's a big part of my life. Big gamer. I used to stream on Twitch as well, but I don't. Again, the irony of working in the games industry now is I have less time to stream on Twitch now. But really, at the moment, I'm really into a game called Dave the Diver that came out this year. It's it's just fantastic. If I tried to explain it to you, you'd be like, that sounds very odd. But it's excellent.
Quite often things that sound very odd also sound cool to me, so that wouldn't be a deal breaker by any chance. So was this part of the reason why you moved to London?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I have a lot of friends in London. I really like the theatre, like going to see the shows and stuff in London. There's more variety to do in London, and yeah, it was a bit of a career move as well. So there was lots of different factors in why I moved to London. I found as a place, Bristol wasn't making me very happy anymore. It was definitely time to get out and be somewhere else, and I'm really glad I did. So really, yeah, a lot happier here.
And thinking about what's happening with the band now, so obviously the album came out fairly recently, and if I understand right, you've been also touring very recently. Was that around the UK?
That was Europe and the UK. So we did some dates in Germany, France, the Netherlands, and yeah, a couple of UK dates as well. It wasn't the longest tour in the world, but yeah, it was good. Good run of headline shows. Paris in particular, that was one of the best shows I've ever played in my life. It was crazy. And then we've got the Enslaved tour coming up in March. That's our next tour. So that's really exciting because they're one of my favourite bands.
I saw a note about that. Yeah, so you're going to be the support for them traveling around. I think you're going to be playing Prague as one of the dates. Is that right? Did I make that up?
Yeah, we are playing in Prague.
Have you played there before?
Yes, we have. We've played Prague a couple of different times. It's always been really good.
Yeah, I think I saw a few years ago you played in Japan as well. Is that kind of the most exotic place that you've gone to play?
Yeah, it's definitely the furthest away we've been from home, and really excited for me. I mean, Japan's one of my favorite countries. I went there previously before we toured there and had just one of the best times ever going there to experience all the culture. As an anime nerd, I absolutely love it over there, and a gaming nerd. So yeah, I mean, Japan ticks a lot of boxes for me, and getting to play there was absolutely incredible. And hopefully, we're definitely hoping to get back out there soon.
And have you got any sort of wish list locations that you'd like to be able to play that you haven't been to yet?
I really want to get out of States, but the visas are very expensive. So just trying to sort of figure out how we can make it happen, really, without losing a ton of money.
Yeah. And thinking about vinyl, because we talked about vinyl a bit at the beginning, and you said that that's sort of what you grew up with around the house. I'm wondering, as a musician, playing in a band, making albums, releasing albums in the age of, online and streaming media, how do you feel about the way that your music is experienced when it's not live? Is it important to you that people listen to records or listen to CDs, or are you perfectly happy if people listen to the music online? Does it make any difference to you?
I don't think it's my place to instruct people on the best ways to enjoy our music, whatever way works for them, I'm just grateful that they're even listening to us at all. So I'm not a purist.
Okay. And
when it comes to vinyl.
Yeah. And so in terms of people following the band and keeping up to date with what you've got going on, where should people be directed towards for everything Svalbard?
We're on all the social media channels. On Facebook, we're Svalbard UK, because Svalbard we weren't allowed to have. And at Svalbard on Instagram, at Svalbard Band on Twitter. I'm at Serena Cherry Cat on Instagram. And that's kind of all the places where we are. We do have a TikTok, but getting to grips with that.
Yeah, I haven't ventured that one yet.
That's kind of just stay tuned to our socials, really.
Well, Serena, thank you very much for your time. And for anyone who hasn't yet checked out the latest album, The Weight of the Mask, I definitely recommend that they do so. And so until next time, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for having me.